I, the all-powerful Grand Tutor, never could have imagined that just as I was about to sit back and enjoy my endless wealth and glory, two immortal cultivators would suddenly appear in the sky. With total disregard for the mortal lives below, they began a fierce battle in mid-air. The shockwaves of their clash were like divine punishment raining down upon us. In a matter of seconds, the entire royal city was completely wiped out. My 3,000 wives, concubines, and children, all perished in the destruction. And yet, I didn't feel a single ounce of sorrow. Instead, I couldn't hold back the wild laughter bubbling up inside me. Because, from the very day I seized power, I had secretly dispatched tens of thousands of armored cavalry to search for traces of the Immortals. But even after scouring the frozen seas of the far north, the vast oceans of the extreme south, the abysses of the far east, and the mountain ranges of the deep west, they never found a single clue. Now, seeing the existence of cultivators with my own two eyes, I immediately formed a hand seal, and summoned my life-bound artifact, Samsara. This treasure has the power to take my actual, lived experiences, and convert them into illusory memories, allowing me to travel back to a preset anchor in time. Truth be told, this was already my second life on this continent. In my first life, knowing absolutely nothing about this world, I could only scrape by as an ordinary merchant. It wasn't until I became a wealthy man that I finally married and had children. Living out a completely mundane, uneventful life. It was only on my deathbed that I accidentally awakened this Samsara artifact. Relying on this very treasure, I was able to skyrocket through the ranks in this second life, becoming the all-powerful Grand Tutor I am today. But, now isn't the time to hit reset, because I still have something crucial to take care of. With most of the capital now lying in ruins, it was the perfect excuse for my trusted city guard to take over the reconstruction. And more importantly, I could use this chance to quietly investigate the whereabouts of those two cultivators. Several months passed by, the rebuilt capital finally regained a hint of its former life. But my secret agents still couldn't find a single trace of those Immortals. Well then, if that's how it is, I'm not going to waste any more time. Without hesitation, I activated Samsara. Just like always, a few choices materialized right before my eyes. To retain my cultivation level and charging progress. Option 3. Allow a loved one to keep their memories of this life. And Option 4. Give up all perks to speed up the charging process. After some thought, I still went with the fourth option. After all, the artifact's ability to turn reality into an illusion requires a massive amount of energy to activate. Whenever I'm hit by a fatal attack, the reincarnation artifact drains its stored energy to automatically form a protective barrier. In this lifetime, my goal was crystal clear. I needed to pry the secrets of cultivation from those two Immortals. Thanks to the experience I gathered over 2 lifetimes, everything went unbelievably smoothly. During the Imperial exams, I performed even better than in my previous life. I swept first place in all 3 exams, and my name echoed throughout the empire. Though the royal ministers couldn't understand my choice, I insisted on taking up the post in Wen County anyway. Using my unmatched reputation and deep knowledge of the local officials, I quickly got the county running like a well-oiled machine, and began building up my own inner circle. I carefully tracked down a man who looked exactly like the Prince of Xianxia, and trained him to be a perfect body double. Later, we teamed up and assassinated the real prince in the wilderness, successfully taking his place. From that moment on, the true power of the prince's estate was entirely in my hands. When the time came for the prince's wedding to the Grand Scholar's granddaughter, he slipped into the bridal chamber under the cover of night, and consummated the marriage in his place. The very next year, she gave birth to my child. A few years down the line, the emperor fell critically ill. I immediately marched into the capital with my loyalists. Under my direct manipulation, my puppet prince smoothly ascended the throne. Meanwhile, I flooded the royal court with my own people, and with the Grand Scholar's granddaughter helping me from the shadows, I soon had the entire empire under my absolute control. Once the time was right, I placed my own son on the emperor's throne, crowned myself Grand Chancellor, and once again reached the absolute pinnacle of power. But right at that moment, my spies brought me a crucial piece of intel. At the Void Abyss, on the easternmost edge of the continent, every 15 years, the mist would clear for 6 months. Through the haze, they could faintly make out a magnificent complex of buildings. The city inside was bustling and vibrant. It looked like it housed a population of over 1 million people. Exotic beasts could even be seen soaring through the sky. When I asked if it was possible to enter the abyss, the scouts told me that every single attempt had failed. Anyone who got too close would be ripped to shreds by sudden, violent winds. It seemed my only option was to wait for those 2 immortal cultivators. In the blink of an eye, over a decade had passed. The moment for history to repeat itself had finally arrived. Just like in my previous life, the 2 cultivators appeared above the royal capital, right on schedule. But this time, just as they were about to strike, they were met with countless iron projectiles firing up from the ground. The burly man, Ko Hong, instantly threw up a protective barrier, giving him 0 time to react. The next wave of attacks came crashing down. Seeing this, Ko Hong raised his hand and froze the bullets mid-air. Then, channeling his spiritual energy, he snatched a rifle right out of a soldier's hands. After inspecting it, he scoffed. To think they used mere machinery to replace magical formations and mortal trinkets in place of spiritual energy. I'll admit, the design is absolutely brilliant. But it's only useful in a forsaken land like this, where the laws of nature are broken. Outside this mortal realm, it's nothing but a pile of useless scrap metal. With that, he suddenly pulled all the surrounding guns into the air and crushed them to dust. Mere mortals dare to raise their hands against an immortal? Divine art. Roar of the fire dragon. In the very next second, a golden silhouette burst forth. A massive, golden dragon plummeted from the heavens. And in an instant, the royal capital was utterly annihilated. However, when the dust settled, he was shocked to see that, although the buildings were reduced to rubble, not a single person was hurt. Dao Xuanzi, standing beside him, immediately noticed something was off. He pointed out that the bullets had all been soaked in mortal blood. Only then did it hit Ko Hong. Mortal blood carried the mortal miasma, a deadly poison to any immortal cultivator. Realizing they had walked right into a trap, the two of them spun around and desperately tried to flee. Seeing this, I shouted at the top of my lungs. If I let the two of you escape today, tomorrow, the news that you've secured the core formation technique will spread across the entire cultivation world. Hearing this, Dao Xuanzi was shaken to his very core. This secret was strictly between the two of them. How on earth did it leak? What they didn't know was that all of this intel, including the fatal weakness of the immortal mortal barrier, was something I had eavesdropped on during their fight in my previous life. In that brief moment of distraction, thousands of specially forged artillery shells came whistling through the air, exploding all around the two of them. Every single one was packed to the brim with mortal blood. In no time, their bodies were so thoroughly corrupted that they could no longer fly. Plummeting heavily to the ground, the surrounding soldiers immediately bellowed out, "Immortal masters, lay down your weapons. The Grand Preceptor has decreed, if you surrender without a fight, your lives will be spared." Just as Dao Xuanzi was about to risk it all in a desperate fight to the death, he suddenly saw a ring fly right in front of his face. He snapped his head back, only to see a dying Ko Hong using his very last ounce of strength to toss his storage ring over to him. With a fading, ragged voice, Ko Hong urged Dao Xuanzi to take the ring and run for his life. The moment the words left his mouth, he breathed his last. Watching all of this unfold from a distance, I couldn't help but marvel. The devastating power of the immortal mortal barrier against cultivators was actually this terrifying. Dao Xuanzi mistakenly assumed that another cultivator was hiding behind these mortals, ambushing them from the shadows. The sheer thought of him and his brother dying to such a filthy, underhanded trick pushed him into an absolute, blinding rage. Without a second thought, he ignited his very life essence. Channeling the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, he manifested a colossal sword, a full 100 meters wide. Seeing that this massive blade was about to cleave straight through the royal capital, I frantically triggered my reincarnation artifact. I ended this current lifetime, and snapped right back to my original anchor point in time. This time, I decided to change my strategy. I was going to pull one of them over to my side first. After taking full control of the royal court, I personally made my way to the skies above the void abyss. Based on my timeline calculations, today just so happens to be the day the Great Fog clears, an event that occurs only once every 15 years. But, when I looked through my spyglass and saw the bottom of the abyss clearly, I instantly broke out in a cold sweat. There was no magnificent city down there. It was nothing but a wasteland of ruins. And what was even more terrifying, carved into the massive stone wall were 4 huge words. "The immortal path is dead." I racked my brain over it. Just what kind of disaster happened here? And what kind of catastrophe had struck the entire cultivation world? I waited patiently, for another few decades, until the day those two finally showed up in the royal city again. This time, I ordered my soldiers to focus all their firepower directly on Ko Hong, while shouting at the top of my lungs, "Ko Hong, you little brat. We've been waiting here for a long time." Under the orders of Immortal Master Dao Xuanzi, Ko Hong blocked the incoming bullets, but turned pale with shock when he realized they were coated in anti-immortal miasma. This carefully crafted scheme of mine was designed specifically to make them turn on each other, to create the perfect opening for me to strike. Hearing this, Ko Hong flew into a blind rage. He turned and cursed violently at Dao Xuanzi. "Dao Xuanzi, you despicable, backstabbing coward. How dare you use the miasma against me?" Dao Xuanzi was completely baffled. He couldn't wrap his head around why mere mortals would use his name to ambush Ko Hong. And worse, how do they know how to use the anti-immortal miasma? He desperately tried to defend himself. "I had nothing to do with these mortals. I didn't order this." I seized the moment, and kept fanning the flames from below. "Immortal Master Dao Xuanzi, how can you just turn your back on us like this? Didn't we have a deal? You said once we stole the core formation technique, you'd take our people out of this spiraless wasteland." Those words completely shattered Ko Hong's judgment. He was now absolutely convinced that Dao Xuanzi was plotting against him. After all, besides the two of them, absolutely no one else in the world should have known about the technique. Seeing the situation spiraling out of control, Dao Xuanzi instantly cast a spell to track the source of my voice on the ground. He locked onto my position in seconds, and dove straight down like a bolt of lightning. But the moment he landed, he realized. The voice, it was actually coming from a black box. He was filled with shock and suspicion. Just what kind of magical artifact is this? This guy is incredibly cautious. With just a wave of his hand, he blew my speaker to pieces. Meanwhile, Ko Hong had caught up in his pursuit. Roaring with a mix of grief and absolute fury, he screamed. Dao Xuanzi, you and I have been friends for 100 years. I never thought you'd turn out to be such a despicable snake. With that, he formed hand seals and cast a spell. A roaring fire dragon lunged straight at Dao Xuanzi. Naturally, Dao Xuanzi wasn't going to just sit there and die. He immediately summoned his natal flying sword, clashing violently with the fire dragon. Seeing this golden opportunity, I loudly stoked the flames again. Dao Xuanzi is a treacherous backstabber. If we let him win, we are all dead meat. I immediately ordered my men. Give Master Ko Hong everything you've got. Help him kill this bastard. Ko Hong was overjoyed to hear this. Ah, the wicked truly do bring about their own doom. Dao Xuanzi, you always acted so high and mighty. Now you finally taste what it's like to be utterly betrayed and alone, don't you? The wrongly accused Dao Xuanzi was so furious he was practically steaming from his ears. You idiot, we're being played. But Ko Hong was way past listening to any explanations. He instantly unleashed his newly mastered ultimate technique, the 4 cages. A sky full of raging flames morphed into a massive prison, trapping Dao Xuanzi inside. Sensing things going horribly wrong, Dao Xuanzi quickly formed hand seals and blasted his way out of the cage. Following an earth-shattering boom, he shot up into the sky, heavily wounded. Once again, he summoned that apocalyptic giant sword. Ko Hong didn't back down an inch. He had been dying to test his strength against this very move of Dao Xuanzi's. Just at the hair-raising moment when their ultimate attacks were about to collide, I ordered my men to fire one last, full volley at Dao Xuanzi. When the special bullets detonated, the mortal-immortal barrier instantly drained Dao Xuanzi's magical power, leaving him defenseless as Ko Hong's dragon branches impaled him right through. Those branches coiled and tore at him like vicious, venomous snakes. In the blink of an eye, they ripped Dao Xuanzi to bloody shreds. The giant sword in the sky instantly shattered into dust. As soon as Ko Hong landed, I rushed forward and dropped to my knees. I beg you, Immortal Master. Please save the lives of the 1,000 members of my clan. He glared at me and demanded coldly. Those voices just now, that was your doing, wasn't it? A mere mortal, daring to interfere in a battle between cultivators? I answered him calmly. Even insects cling to life. I was simply trying to find a way to keep my people alive. At last, I had the chance to face this cultivator directly. And put my long-awaited plan into action. Hearing this, Ko Hong's expression softened slightly, and he sighed. Who in this world isn't struggling just to survive? Seizing the moment, I said, Dao Xuanzi promised us that if we helped him, he would take us away from here. Ko Hong shook his head with a mocking sigh. Dao Xuanzi always acted like a man of his word, but I didn't expect him to be so utterly despicable in secret. To actually lie to mortals. The absolute immortal array is incredibly dangerous. We cultivators struggle just to make it through alive. How could anyone possibly bring mortals along? His words hit me like a ton of bricks. Forcing down my shock, I led him into the underground hidden chamber. And pressed him. Is that really true? Ko Hong replied bluntly, why would I lie to you? Unless someone is a golden core cultivator, there is absolutely no way they could protect a mortal through the array. Completely crushed, I asked in a hollow voice. So you're saying, we mortals, truly have no hope of ever leaving this world? Ko Hong didn't sugarcoat it. To leave the land of immortal awakening, you must cross the absolute immortal array. With a mortal body? Completely impossible. Your days are already numbered anyway. Isn't it enough to just be a local king here? Still refusing to give up, I asked desperately. But, what if someone manages to reach the foundation establishment stage? Hearing this, Ko Hong burst into laughter. What a fool's dream. There is absolutely no spiritual energy in this place. And you mortals, you're completely tainted by miasma. How could you possibly cultivate? Unless you go to the outside realm to reforge your physical body. And completely wash away that taint. Otherwise, even if the great Tao of immortality were placed right in front of you, you wouldn't be able to see it, let alone touch it. After hearing his words, I trembled all over, absolutely consumed by despair. After asking again and again, only to confirm that it was utterly hopeless. I slowly stood up and walked away. But the exact second I stepped out of the hidden chamber, the 2.5 meter thick stone door slammed shut with a deafening crash. Immediately, huge torrents of immortal bane miasma spewed from the surrounding walls, trapping Ko Hong completely inside. Listening to his agonizing, blood-curdling screams echoing from behind the stone door, I said coldly, immortals and mortals cannot coexist. How could I ever be foolish enough to trust the words of a cultivator? Earlier, I had learned from Ko Hong that this place was the immortal extinction zone. It all stemmed from that massive tribulation in the ancient cultivation world. At first, the cultivators didn't care at all about the plagues sweeping through the mortal realms. Not until a cultivator actually got infected. Shockingly, the plague then began to spread like wildfire among the cultivators themselves. In just a very short amount of time, this plague, which traveled straight through spiritual energy, plunged the entire cultivation world into absolute panic. For the lucky ones, their cultivation merely regressed. The unlucky ones were reduced to mere mortals overnight. And ultimately, they died, their souls scattered to the wind. Driven mad by despair, the cultivators began slaughtering mortals just to vent their fury. But they quickly realized that this only removed the restraints on the frenzy plague. It mutated, spreading even faster through the spiritual energy. The cultivation world had absolutely no choice but to stop the massacres. They had to pivot, desperately researching a cure. At the exact same time, a group of immortals proposed the now infamous Great Migration Plan. They herded every single mortal into shattered realms and pocket dimensions completely devoid of spiritual energy. Then, they used massive arrays to permanently seal them away. Ko Hong had continued his explanation. Even though the cultivation world was wiped clean of mortals, not all descendants of cultivators were born with spiritual roots. As time went on, a massive number of mortal descendants began to appear again. If these descendants ever want to cultivate, they have to first purge all the mortal taint from their bodies. Gradually, this miasma became the dividing line between immortals and mortals. People call it the mortal-immortal miasma. After reading his confession, my hands couldn't stop trembling. Who knows how many immortal forsaken lands are out there? And cultivators willing to risk entering them are incredibly rare. I'm already extremely lucky to have encountered two. As a mortal, my lifespan is limited. Even if I can keep reincarnating and running simulations, I am still just repeating things within a finite life. I am already 70 years old now. My physical limit is 86. The chances of meeting another cultivator in these short 16 years are practically zero. But how can I resign myself to repeating this mortal life, lifetime after lifetime? Suddenly, a flash of inspiration hit me. I rushed straight to the cell to confront Ko Hong. How were those mortals sent to this immortal forsaken land in the first place? Seeing that I still hadn't given up, Ko Hong sneered. Even if you get out, so what? You're in your 70s. Don't tell me you still think you can cultivate immortality? I shot back. If we make it back to the cultivation world, can you rebuild your cultivation after losing all your power? Then, I made him a promise. As long as you help me find a way to the cultivation world, I swear I will take you with me. Ko Hong cursed furiously. You treacherous snake. Don't you dare try to trick me again. I replied calmly. Whether you believe me or not, this is still a glimmer of hope. Do you really want to rot in this cell for the rest of your life? Ko Hong sighed in resignation. Back then, they must have used transport artifacts like flying ships or shuttles. In ancient times, the cultivation world was flourishing. Those kinds of artifacts were everywhere. But unfortunately, after the Great Cataclysm, every cultivator was left fearing for their own survival. Those artifacts became incredibly rare. I caught that detail and pressed him sharply. What exactly do you mean by the Great Cataclysm? You mean that plague, right? Ko Hong nodded. The immortal mortal miasma might be incredibly bizarre, but it could never shake the very foundation of the cultivation world. The only reason it spread so rampantly was because more than half of the cultivators had already perished in a great catastrophe. Hearing this, it reminded me of what he yelled while fighting Dao Zanzi, about the golden core Dao. It's either him, or me. Even though there are plenty of core formation methods out there, the number of cultivators stuck at the foundation establishment stage is far, far greater. Suddenly, it hit me. Could that great catastrophe have been that the same immortal technique cannot be practiced by more than one person? Ko Hong's face grew incredibly solemn. Exactly. Legend has it that in ancient times, this restriction didn't exist. Back then, the great cultivation sects took in massive numbers of disciples. Cultivators had their masters to guide them, and they could freely spar with their fellow disciples. The entire cultivation world was thriving and full of life. Until one day, cultivators noticed that their cultivation progress was slowing down drastically. They could even sense exactly how many people in the world were practicing the exact same technique as them. But the most terrifying part was, the more people practicing the same method, the slower everyone's cultivation speed became. Countless cultivators found their progress completely stalled. And as their lifespans neared their end, masters and disciples turned against each other. Fellow disciples slaughtered one another. A bloodbath that swept through the entire cultivation world broke out just like that. Anyone practicing the same technique instantly became mortal enemies. Even if you hid deep in the mountains, they would track you down through the resonance of the technique. At this point, a flash of pure terror crossed Ko Hong's eyes. After that massive catastrophe, the cultivation world was utterly crippled. The great sects fractured and collapsed. Cultivators never dared to casually take in disciples again. The rule to never teach your technique to another soul became an absolute, ironclad law. Every single cultivator began guarding their techniques with their very lives. And that is exactly why Dao Zanzi, just for the sake of a core formation technique. Didn't hesitate for a second to turn completely against me. I pressed on, asking, then how do cultivators actually practice these days? And what does the cultivation world even look like right now? Ko Hong explained, cultivators today basically only have two paths they can take. The first is to join the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. It's a massive coalition made up of countless cultivators. You earn contribution points by completing missions or making trades. And then you use those points to exchange for cultivation techniques and resources. The second option is to seek refuge with the Council of Five Elders, founded by 5 supreme almighty beings. As long as you have the aptitude for cultivation, you can join voluntarily. But the price is, you have to sign a soul contract, binding yourself to serve the council for a set number of years. I immediately caught onto the crucial detail. From what you're saying, cultivation techniques don't seem all that rare in the cultivation world. Ko Hong shook his head with a bitter smile. Most of those are just incomplete fragments. Even after being heavily revised by the major factions, they can only take you to the peak of chi condensation at best. If you want to reach foundation establishment, you have to switch to a completely new technique. And the same goes for anything above that. As for golden core techniques, they practically only exist in legends. I instantly realized the problem. Changing techniques so often, wouldn't it mean having to start from scratch every time you break through to a new realm? Ko Hong nodded. That's exactly why all cultivators are required to practice the fragmented scroll of the supreme primordial truth. It's not really a cultivation technique, more like a secret art. It allows someone to scatter their cultivation and switch paths with almost zero loss in power, letting them quickly recover their previous realm. Hearing about such a miraculous technique, I couldn't help but gasp in amazement. But Ko Hong just let out a heavy sigh. What does it matter how miraculous the scripture is? Authentic, complete techniques are impossibly hard to come by in this world. Dao Xuanzi didn't even know, right up until the moment he died, that I stole that manual not just because it was a core formation technique, but because it was a complete, authentic manual that leads straight to the nascent soul realm. Those words sent a massive shockwave through my mind. Ko Hong then went on to reveal, for thousands of years, there have been rumors that mortals from the forsaken lands of immortality have been secretly smuggling themselves back into the cultivation world. I stated it with absolute certainty. Since these rumors actually exist, I'm even less likely to give up on this glimmer of hope. Ko Hong was completely baffled. Why would an old man with one foot in the grave go through all this trouble? I laid out my terms. As long as you help me find a way to the cultivation world, not only will I take you with me, I'll also return everything that belongs to you and Dao Xuanzi. Ko Hong instantly got excited. Are you serious? He immediately decided to help me with everything he had. For the next 16 years. With Ko Hong's help, I gathered ancient texts from all over the world, trying to piece together clues from the ancient records, to uncover traces of the Great Migration era. At the same time, I mobilized the army to aggressively excavate ancient tombs, which caused public outrage to boil over. The officials submitted petitions every single day to protest, but I forcefully shut them all down. And yet, right up until my time was almost up, I still hadn't found a single thing. Now, this body of mine could completely burn out at any second. I decided that before my life ended, I would go through the items in my storage ring. The most precious thing in there was definitely Ko Hong's cultivation manual, the one that could take you to the nascent soul stage. It's just a pity that, being a mere mortal, I didn't even have divine sense. Facing such an incredible treasure, I could only sigh in frustration. But right then, the system suddenly prompted that I could recharge it. This completely took me by surprise. I chose to recharge it without a second thought. Anchor point 2. Based on the reincarnation feedback, once the recharge reaches 100%, the second anchor point will be unlocked. This way, I'd be able to choose to restart from any of the available anchor points. After activating the Wanzhen artifact, I chose to keep that nascent soul cultivation scroll. But at that moment, in my personal info panel, a new bound item attribute popped up, which basically meant this cultivation manual would be permanently saved within Wanzhen. Learning my lesson from my previous life, this time, I changed my strategy, secretly shaping the thoughts of the entire realm. And so, in the 5th year of the Mao Ding era, the antiquity-seeking school emerged out of nowhere, shocking the court and country with their precious ancient texts. In the 6th year of Mao Ding, the emperor suddenly fell gravely ill, and the royal doctors were completely at their wits' end. Right then, the antiquity-seeking school brought an elixir into the capital and presented it to His Majesty. After the emperor swallowed the pill, within just a few days, miraculously, he made a full recovery. In the 11th year of Mao Ding, the Zhangwei prefecture cracked a vicious tomb raiding case, capturing a gang of over 100 tomb robbers. The prefect of Zhangwei, Li Fan, didn't dare to handle it on his own. So he sent an urgent 800-mile express dispatch straight to the capital city of Xuanjing, begging the emperor for a verdict. A full month passed before the emperor's decree finally arrived. He didn't sentence them to death, but only condemned them to slavery, keeping them right there in the capital. In the 15th year of Mao Ding, the emperor grew seriously ill again. desperate for another immortal elixir to prolong his life. So, he dispatched an army of over 100,000 soldiers to excavate ancient tombs everywhere, searching for any trace of the elixir. Unfortunately, immortal elixirs were hard to come by, and the emperor died with deep regrets. But this only fueled the world's obsession with seeking antiquity and raiding tombs. Before his death, the emperor passed the throne to the Prince of Xianxia. With that, I once again secretly took control of the realm. In the 23rd year of Mao Ding, as one ancient tomb after another was unearthed, the lost history was gradually pieced back together. The earliest dynasty that could be found was named Qi. So, I offered a massive bounty across the land. Anyone who could find an ancient tomb from the Qi dynasty would be made a marquis. In the 25th year of Mao Ding, the tomb of Yi Xing, the first emperor of the Qi dynasty, was finally discovered. After ordering my men to dig a passageway into the ancient tomb, we found that the main corridor stretched for hundreds of meters. Soon, we found a simple, shabby thatched hut inside. But as we stepped closer for a better look, we were shocked to find that all the straw was actually made of pure gold threads. Seeing this, I immediately ordered my subordinates to open the door. However, when the heavy doors swung open, I was completely stunned. Right in the center of the room sat a memorial tablet. The inscription read, Tomb of Yi Xing, outer sect disciple of the Tai Yan sect. It looks like, even though this guy managed to join the Tai Yan sect, he was just an outer disciple right up until the day he died. He never truly stepped onto the path of immortality, and was ultimately exiled to this place by the cultivators. This Yi Xing must have been entrusted by the cultivators of the Tai Yan sect to take charge of the Great Migration. After that, I searched through the main burial chamber again, but I couldn't find any magical artifacts, like a flying ship. Finding absolutely nothing, I just headed straight back to the palace. A few days later, word finally came back. They said they found it in the inventory list of the burial goods. Records detailing the flying ship. But, this tomb had already been robbed a long time ago. And judging by the traces of destruction left behind, it was looted a whole 1,000 years ago. Hearing that, I was so furious, I flipped the damn table over. I just couldn't accept it. Every single time I get a little bit of hope, it's instantly shattered to pieces. After venting all my anger, I issued a decree to the entire world. Whoever finds any clues related to the immortal ship will be crowned a marquis of 1,000 households. In Anchor Year 35, news finally came back. An immortal's tomb had been discovered. The scouts reported that a few days ago, a group of people were digging up an inconspicuous ancient tomb, when they were suddenly blasted away by some inexplicable power from inside. Hearing this, I immediately ordered my men to bring the immortal Bane miasma and hurry to open the tomb. Then, I ordered my subordinates to splash the miasma all over it. The energy shield, which was originally indestructible, the moment it touched the miasma, instantly dissolved into nothing. Not long after we went inside, someone rushed over to report, saying they found something that looked like a flying ship. Hearing that, I rushed over there without stopping for a second. Looking at the thing in front of me, I was completely dumbfounded. Could it be? Is this really the flying ship? Through the message carved on the wall by the tomb owner before his death, I finally confirmed it. This is the flying ship. So, it turns out the tomb's owner, Qian Hong, was actually a Foundation establishment cultivator. He fled to this place while being hunted down by his enemies. But here in the immortal Severing Lands, there is absolutely no spiritual energy. After burning through all his spirit stones, his cultivation base began to wither away. He figured that 1,000 years ago, when mortals were exiled here, they might have left behind a flying skiff or two. So, he spent decades searching, and eventually found the tomb of Yi Xing. And while there really was a flying skiff inside this tomb, its core power array was already completely busted. Since he wasn't exactly skilled in the art of artifact forging, he finally gave up on ever leaving the immortal Severing Lands. Then, I looked down at the stone tablet. The system identified it as a rare worldly treasure, the Halt Broken Steel. But when I placed my hand on it, the artifact had absolutely no reaction. I guessed it must have been ruined by the immortal mortal miasma, turning it into nothing more than an ordinary rock. After that, I picked up the other items he had left behind. One of them was a cheat condensation manual called the Lesser True Return Art. And it showed that exactly one person was currently practicing it. The other was a Foundation establishment manual called the Cloud and Water Record. It also showed that one person was currently practicing it. Seeing that someone out there was already practicing these techniques, I instantly broke out in a cold sweat. I thought it was a trap. But on second thought, it had been over 3,000 years. Forget about Foundation establishment. Even a golden core cultivator would have turned to dust by now. Could it be that these manuals have original backup copies? After the Great Tribulation, many cultivation techniques were compiled by massive factions, like the 10,000 Immortals League and the Council of Five Elders. So, they definitely had original copies stored away somewhere. Whenever the higher-ups of these factions saw a technique with no active practitioners, they would probably just put it back into circulation for people to buy. Who knows? Over the past 3,000 years, these two manuals Might have changed hands countless times. Anyway, the final item was exactly what I had been dying to find, the flying skiff. It was broken, sure, but that was nothing to worry about. I already knew exactly who could fix it for me. Soon enough, the day came when Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi made their appearance again. But this time, right before they could start fighting, I spoke up and interrupted them. I asked how the two of them could actually fight to the death. Over a measly core formation manual. Furious, they both screamed at me for being so arrogant. But I didn't show the slightest hint of fear. Instead, I casually invited the two of them down for a chat. Curious to see what was going on, they temporarily put their fight on hold. And came to sit down with me. I put on a happy face and told them. Long ago, my ancestor left behind a prophecy. He said that one day, two immortals would emerge from the void abyss. And led our clan out of this place. Today, that prophecy has finally come true. May I ask what I should call you two? I then introduced myself as Li Fan. Dao Xuanzi asked me about leaving this place. And what exactly I meant by that opportunity. My face stiffened for a second. What's wrong? Do you two not believe me? Ko Hong told me that he and his brother had been roaming the immortal realm for hundreds of years. But they had never, ever heard of any divination technique that could predict things 1,000 years into the future. At this point, I stepped forward and asked them, have you ever heard of the Taiyan sect? Ko Hong looked like he just remembered something, and asked excitedly. Wait, do you mean that ancient sect? The one famous all over the world for its divination arts? Seeing that this sect actually existed, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. My ancestor was indeed a disciple of the Taiyan sect, I said. Back then, even though my ancestor joined the sect, he had no interest in cultivation. He was completely obsessed with divination. Later on, a massive cataclysm struck the world, and all the mortals had to be relocated. My ancestor volunteered to take charge of the mortal migration. And after that, he and our family stayed here ever since. Hearing this, Xuanzi nodded. Ah, so that's how it is. But fellow cultivator, why did you stop us brothers? In response, I told them. Seeing you two fight to the death over a core formation manual. Just felt it wasn't worth it. Xuanzi let out a helpless sigh. You probably don't know this. But out there right now, cultivation manuals are incredibly rare. Turning on each other and fighting over a single scroll is completely normal. Right then, I suddenly told them that before my ancestor passed away, he had actually handed down a golden core stage manual. Hearing that, Ko Hong's face immediately lit up with pure joy. That's absolutely fantastic. We brothers won't ever have to fight over cultivation methods, tearing each other apart ever again. Dao Xuanzi couldn't hold back either, eagerly asking, just what exactly I needed their help with. My ancestor's greatest dying wish was for his descendants to one day return to the Taiyan sect. On his deathbed, he passed down a magical artifact known as the Taiyan boat. Even though it's severely damaged, my ancestor used the grand divination art to foresee the future. He prophesied that many years later, two immortal cultivators would grace this very land. One, a master of the sword, and the other, a master of artifact forging. Hearing this, the two of them bought my story completely. They kept marveling at how profoundly mystical the Taihong sect's divination arts truly were. To fully win their trust, I offered to take them to see the cultivation manual with their own eyes. Seeing that Ko Hong wanted to tag along, Dao Xuanzi's face went ice cold as he snapped at him. Didn't you already get your hands on a core formation manual? Are you seriously that greedy? Ko Hong's face paled at those words. He quickly waved his hands, backing down and saying he wouldn't go. I just gave a sinister little smirk. But when I brought Dao Xuanzi to the entrance of the secret chamber, he froze in his tracks, absolutely terrified, because he realized the place was completely flooded with immortal bane miasma. I quickly played the fool. Please don't be angry, immortal master. Us mere mortals, to protect our family's greatest treasure, had no choice but to set up some extreme precautions. With that, I reached inside and pulled out a manual. It was the exact same one I had taken from Ding Hong in my previous life. When Dao Xuanzi saw clearly that it was actually a nascent soul manual, his whole body started trembling with absolute ecstasy. Just as I planned, he had never actually seen the manual Ko Hong possessed. I then fed him a deliberate lie. Immortal Master Ko Hong was right there earlier, and I was terrified he might get greedy, so I lied and said it was only a core formation manual. Hearing this, Dao Xuanzi immediately cupped his fists in sheer admiration. He swore he would force Ko Hong to fix the Taiyan boat for me. I laughed heartily in return, promising him, once it's done, I will personally hand over this manual to you with both hands. When we finally returned to the main hall, Dao Xuanzi assured Ko Hong that I really did have a core formation manual. The moment Ko Hong heard that, he eagerly spoke up. He's just a mere mortal. Let's just take it from him. But Dao Xuanzi stepped in, pointing out that I was, after all, a descendant of the Taiyan sect. We all just witnessed his terrifying divination technique. Who knows what other tricks he's hiding up his sleeve. So, he suggested having Ko Hong help fix the Taiyan boat, and leaving it at that. It's really not that big of a deal anyway. But honestly, Dao Xuanzi was just worried that if I got pushed into a corner, and blurted out that it was my core cultivation technique. Things would get really ugly. This seemingly plain little wooden boat actually ended up taking Ko Hong and the others an entire year to work on. When it was finally fixed and handed back to me, Ko Hong explained that the Taiyan boat's core power system and the size-shifting arrays were fully repaired. But, since they were short on materials, the defensive and offensive arrays only got a basic patch-up. It's enough to break through the absolute immortal array, he said. But it definitely won't hold up against attacks from other cultivators. I was thrilled. That's perfectly fine, I told him. Then Ko Hong went on to explain that the Taiyan boat actually has 3 different forms. It needs spiritual energy to run, and divine sense to steer. The smallest form is 10 meters long, and the largest can expand to over 1,000 meters. The 2 of them didn't have many spirit stones left either, but it was enough to let us fly out using the 100-meter form. However, piloting this thing requires the divine sense of at least a 7th level chi condensation cultivator. He looked pretty smug as he asked if I needed him to pilot it for me. But the moment those words left his mouth, the very next second, I instantly expanded the boat to a full 100 meters. Ko Hong gasped in shock. Fellow Taoist, you really were hiding your true strength. You look just like a mere mortal, yet you can pilot the Taiyan boat so effortlessly. I just brushed it off. It's just a little parlor trick. Nothing worth mentioning. Then, I signaled Dao Xuanzi to come with me to grab the cultivation manual. A few days later, they were ready to head out. Since they were almost completely out of spirit stones, staying here any longer would actually cause their cultivation levels to drop. Ko Hong told me that if I ever managed to make it out of there, I should come find him in Lingtian City, over in the Kongyun Mountains. He also handed me a rolled-up scroll. He said it was the map to the exit of the absolute immortal array that I had asked him to draw. After a few final pleasantries, the 2 of them turned into streaks of light and vanished into the horizon. On their way back, Ko Hong couldn't help but ask, what kind of technique did Xuanzi actually get? Dao Xuanzi just laughed and said, couldn't possibly be the exact same one as yours, right? He then told him not to worry. Once I break through to the golden core stage, I'll definitely keep my promise. As they spoke, they had already arrived right above the absolute immortal array. Dao Xuanzi asked, the mist hasn't cleared yet. Brother, do you still dare to charge in? Ko Hong let out a loud laugh. Why wouldn't I dare? Not long after they left, I steered my own skiff over. At 71 years old, I simply couldn't wait 14 years for the mist to clear. I decided to brave the absolute immortal array, today. I channeled my energy into the Taiyan skiff, accelerating it into a steep dive. Down in the abyss, the vast white mist made everything look like a dreamscape. Soon, the skiff began to shake violently. I must have hit the astral wind layer that Ko Hong mentioned. Rumor has it that these wind blades can shred a mortal to pieces. And even Foundation establishment cultivators have to put up their shields. After half an hour of careful piloting, I finally made it through the astral winds. A blinding light suddenly flooded the path ahead. I had finally managed to escape the array. Once in the cultivation world, I stumbled upon a peerless technique. Over the next 100 years, I formed my golden core, and my path of cultivation was completely smooth sailing. Thousands of years later, I ascended to the immortal realm. Arriving there, I cultivated my immortal power from the very bottom, eventually rising to become an immortal emperor. Then, I shattered the realm's boundaries and entered the divine realm. I had to start all over again as a lowly miner. Until, after 10,000 years of bitter cultivation, I became a divine king. And then, I ascended once more, to the primordial divine realm, only to end up as a bottom-tier gatekeeper, bitterly starting from scratch all over again. But right at that moment, I suddenly snapped awake. That's when I realized it was all just a dream, and my skiff had completely flipped upside down. According to the map, I had already left the illusion light layer, and entered the 3rd layer of the array, the inversion layer. It seems I only woke up because the Taiyan skiff automatically navigated us out of the illusion. Maybe, I can just let it navigate on its own. I just need to provide the power. Almost as if guided by fate, the skiff sent me a sense of direction. Following its lead, I sped up. We smoothly bypassed the flowing fire layer, bitterly cold mystic ice layer, and the perilous thunderstorm layer. The Taiyan skiff somehow managed to scrape past one devastating crisis after another. Until finally, we arrived at the very last layer, the realm of darkness. Ko Hong said there was no danger in this layer, just endless darkness. Once I cross this, I'll finally be in the cultivation world. My heart was pounding with excitement. Am I finally getting out of here? But the very next second, a massive, bloodthirsty maw lunged right at me. Thank God I reacted in time. I instantly triggered the revert skill, ending that lifetime. Phew, even though I didn't get a clear look at that thing, Ko Hong and the others never breathed a word about something like this lurking in the dark layer. Could it be a trap, specifically meant for mortals? Even though I failed, at least I reaped a massive haul in that lifetime. After securing the Taiyan skiff, I began my 7th reincarnation cycle. In year 4 of the anchor, I led my crew deep into Qianhong's tomb. We used the immortal mortal miasma spray to slowly eat away at the ruined steel. This time around, the steel remained perfectly intact, which meant I could finally recharge it. 15 years later, the revert skill was fully charged at last. Once again, I steered the Taiyan skiff straight into the lightning layer. It didn't take long to reach the dark layer, but this time, there was no sign of the monster. I didn't hesitate for a second. I slammed on the accelerator and dashed forward, but in the blink of an eye, that giant maw materialized again. This practically confirmed my theory. That beast preys exclusively on mortals. Damn it, I had no choice but to spin the boat around and retreat back into the lightning layer. To my total surprise, it stopped chasing me. Catching the flashes of lightning, I finally got a good look at its true form. It was a whale, an absolutely gigantic whale. My entire ship wasn't even the size of one of its teeth. With such an insane difference in size, how could it lock onto me with dead accuracy every single time? Over the next 15 years, I tried forcing my way through the dark layer again and again. But the time it took for the beast to spot me just kept getting shorter. In the end, all I could do was desperately maneuver around the Leviathan before retreating in total disgrace. That was, until year 35 of the anchor. I noticed something. Whenever the white mist started to clear up, the giant whale seemed to be held back by something. It bought me a tiny bit of extra time. Just maybe. Enough time to dive all the way to the bottom of the void abyss. This time, I decided to risk it all. I gave it absolutely everything I had. But right as the light of the exit flashed before my eyes, I had ventured way too deep, and there was absolutely no time to dodge. Left with no choice, I had to activate the Realm of Return. This time, I decided to speed up the charging process. In my 8th life, anchoring at year 4, I opened Xianxia's tomb once again. Anchor charging progress, 51%. Anchoring at year 5, the day the white mist dissipates. The return's charging progress was approaching 90%. But without reaching 100%, it was completely meaningless. I just had to wait patiently. My attempts at anchoring at years 20 and 35 both ended in failure. Still, these attempts weren't entirely useless. At the very least, my control over the Taiyan arc became much more proficient. Anchoring at year 50, I gave up on forcing my way through the dark layer. My aging body was just too slow to react. There was absolutely no hope of success. So, I decided to go see my 2 old friends, hoping that maybe I could find some clues. Just like before, using the golden core technique, I convinced them to stay at the Grand Preceptor's estate. I showed them the portrait I drew of the giant whale. Ko Hong said she had never seen such a creature when she crossed over. Dao Xuanji, however, recalled an ancient record. In ancient times, the beast-taming sect, relying on their beast-taming arts, could control all kinds of exotic beasts. And among them, was this very giant whale. Ko Hong then remembered as well, that this creature was called the Rift Whale. Hearing this, I eagerly asked how we could deal with it. But unfortunately, they told me, this beast had vanished from the cultivation world thousands of years ago. There was absolutely nothing we could do. I could only sigh. After handing the technique over to Dao Xuanji, I activated the return, bringing this lifetime to an end. In my 9th life, I opened Xianxia's tomb once again. I wanted to absorb the energy from the broken steel of Hulk to recharge. But sadly, the return didn't react at all. Anchoring at years 20, 35, and 50, I tried and failed, over and over again. Anchoring at years 65. At 85 years old, my life was drawing to a close. This time, I simply gave up on steering. I just let the Taiyan arc slowly sink. But strangely enough, the rift whale that was supposed to show up was nowhere to be seen. Seeing that the exit was just up ahead, I shakily got to my feet and broke into a full sprint. But the second I sped up, the rift whale appeared. That's when it finally hit me. As long as I moved at a constant speed, the rift whale couldn't detect me. Keeping a steady pace was the key to safely crossing the immortal array. Figuring this out, I burst into wild laughter. The final lock keeping me in the dead zone had just been broken. Even though the giant whale was chasing me down, I had already reached the exit. Amidst my laughter and its deafening roars, the Taiyan arc tore through the rift between the 2 worlds and flew straight toward the cultivation realm. Everything around me started to blur, as if I were soaring through countless worlds. The immense pressure made blood pour from my eyes, ears, and nose. But I couldn't care less. Looking back at the immortal array, my view zoomed out into infinity. And I saw a sight I will never forget for as long as I live. The true, massive form of the rift whale was right before my eyes. And there wasn't just one. There were tens of thousands of them, roaming freely through the pitch-black void of nothingness. While the dead zone I had just escaped was drifting further and further away from the cultivation realm. When the Taiyan arc finally broke through the very last barrier, tears streamed down my face. 9 lifetimes of reincarnation, nearly 500 years of my life. I finally got to see the true face of the cultivation realm. When I triggered the reincarnation on the brink of death, I was actually planning to choose the accelerated recharge. But then, I spotted the fragmented steel on my item list. After giving it some serious thought, I decided to keep this strange artifact. It was the key to proving a massive theory of mine. In my 10th life, since I didn't choose the accelerated recharge, I had to wait 20 long years. In the 3rd year after anchoring, I visited Xianxia's grave. This time, I just brought out the fragmented steel I had saved from my previous life. Just as I expected, the two fragments started to merge together all on their own. This confirmed my theory. Rare treasures of heaven and earth are truly one of a kind. Any replica created by Samsara is naturally drawn to its original counterpart. Once the fusion was complete, the magic array inside the tomb grew noticeably stronger. I ordered my men to use the mist from the immortal staff to slowly break through the tomb's defenses. It took us a very long time before we finally stepped into the burial chamber. Even after the fusion, the broken steel of halting still looked quite damaged. But it was much more intact than before. Unfortunately, Samsara still couldn't absorb it. Looks like it needs further repairs. I stowed this upgraded steel inside the Taiyan skyship. It would serve as my trump card for navigating the cultivation world later on. As the 20-year charging cycle was nearing completion, I ruthlessly confiscated the wealth of corrupt officials and powerful elites. After all, as a newcomer to the cultivation world, I'd still need plenty of gold and silver to deal with mortals. Aside from money, I also stocked up on dry rations and other essential supplies. Food is the lifeblood of a nation. Requisitioning such a massive amount all at once naturally sparked fierce backlash from the royal court. Faced with endless petitions from angry ministers, without a single word, I expanded the Taiyan skyship to its absolute limit and hovered it directly over the imperial city. Seeing this, the commoners immediately fell to their knees in worship. As for those self-righteous ministers, the color completely drained from their faces. Suddenly, they were falling over themselves to help me gather the rations. Riding on this momentum, I cracked down on a bunch of corrupt merchants who were hoarding goods. Finally, I managed to pack the Taiyan skyship to the absolute brim. With everything fully prepared, I piloted the skyship and returned to the western abyss. But after punching through the barrier of the mortal realm, the sight before my eyes left me absolutely stunned. Last time, it was clearly a sprawling range of majestic mountains. Yet this time, it was an endless, boundless ocean. Kohong's map didn't have a single marking for this stretch of sea. Left with no other choice, I could only keep flying forward, desperately searching for any signs of human life. Out on that vast, empty ocean, the Taiyan skyship flew for 7 days and 7 nights without spotting a speck of land. As my spiritual energy slowly drained away, skyship's speed dragged slower and slower. Just when all hope seemed lost, suddenly, out on the distant horizon, a sinking ship appeared. Looking through my spyglass, I saw someone on board screaming that they'd sent a signal to the Immortal Master. The moment I heard the words Immortal Master, my heart skipped a beat. I instantly stashed my Taiyan skiff and dove into the water, blending in with the drowning passengers and pretending to be on my very last breath. A short while later, a shadowy figure materialized in the sky above. The figure cast some sort of spell that not only blurred his face, but completely muted everyone's voices. I watched as the Immortal Master gently lifted a single finger. The 100-meter-long ship magically righted itself. The massive holes in the hull sealed shut right before our eyes. With a sweeping wave of his hand, all of us in the water were hurled right back onto the deck. Hovering there in mid-air, the Immortal Master demanded to know who had sent the signal. A man named Su Changyu dropped to his knees and answered. The Immortal Master spoke with an icy tone. You know the rules. Once we reach the destination, my job is done. After Su Changyu nodded in agreement, the Master waved his hand, and the massive ship blasted off toward parts unknown. We sailed in this eerie, dead silence for most of the day. Finally, under the cover of darkness, a brilliantly lit island came into view. The docks were packed with hundreds of massive ships, but our ship bypassed them, circling halfway around the island instead, heading straight into a secluded, hidden sea cave. As soon as we docked, a few bulky men in black robes stepped up to meet us. Strangely, these men acted as if they couldn't even see the Immortal Master standing right there. They just started roughly herding everyone off the ship. We were shoved into a massive, cavernous hall. One of the men in black coldly announced, "You're resting here for the night. Grab your own food. Someone will be here tomorrow to sort out your new identities." With that, he turned and walked out without looking back. The second they were gone, people started complaining. Damn our luck, running into a sea monster like that. We had almost 100 people when we set sail. Now we're down to less than half. Another richly dressed boy chimed in. I have no idea what my old man was thinking, forcing me to come to this hellhole. I was perfectly happy being the Prince of Zhenan back home. Hearing this, the crowd let out a collective sigh. It was obvious they were all pampered kids from wealthy, noble families. Su Changyu stepped in to smooth things over. Why all the complaints, everyone? Every single one of our families spent an absolute fortune just to send us here. Instead of whining about it, we should just focus on our cultivation. If we actually manage to become immortal masters, not only will we gain immortality, we'll even get the chance to go back and bring our families over. His words made everything click for me. Just as I suspected, these guys were all from the spiritless lands. It seemed that back where they came from, the existence of the cultivation world was already an open secret. They'd even set up a fully functioning smuggling operation, right as I was lost in thought. Someone suddenly tapped me on the shoulder. You look familiar, brother. What sort of official post did you hold back in Dali? Perhaps you're a wealthy merchant or royalty from one of the provinces. I shot him an icy glare. Without a word, I swatted his hand right off my shoulder. Startled, the guy yanked his hand back, and sheepishly scurried away to hide behind the crowd. He cursed under his breath. This old geezer must be a massive big shot. Most likely some powerful noble from God knows where. Better keep my distance. Right at the crack of dawn, a middle-aged man came looking for Su Changyu in the group. I'll be taking you to register your identities in a bit. Remember to keep your mouths shut. If anyone asks, just say you're refugees from Dayu Island. Tell them a hurricane destroyed your homes and you fled here for your lives. Following his orders, we all changed into torn, tattered rags. Escorted by a few men in black, we made our way through a secret tunnel up to the surface. The locals on the island didn't even bat an eye at our group of ragged refugees. Looks like this happens all the time. After winding our way through the city streets, we finally stopped in front of a massive estate. A servant led us in through the back gate. The grand hall was already packed with over 100 people, and it was finally our turn. Our leader, Sun Zhang, stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Manager Zhao, these are the refugees here for registration. A strange red glint flashed in Manager Zhao's eyes as he let out a sudden, cold sneer. Sun Zhang, these so-called refugees sure look like they come from wealthy families. Sun Zhang quickly forced an apologetic smile, and discreetly slipped a glowing object into Manager Zhao's hand. Catching sight of the glittering gold, Manager Zhao's whole attitude changed in an instant. Well, natural disasters have been quite frequent lately. Since your heavenly treasure pavilion cares so much, I'll be sure to put in a good word with the island master. During the registration, Manager Zhao paid special attention to me. He didn't just explain exactly how to use the identity tag. He kept reminding me over and over to keep it safe. Sun Zhang watched from the sidelines, muttering to himself, completely baffled as to why Manager Zhao was treating me so well. Once the paperwork was done, Sun Zhang led us to a private courtyard, where he forced Su Changyu to sign a binding contract. Su Changyu bit his finger and used his blood to write his name on the parchment. Instantly, the paper dissolved into a burst of golden light and vanished. Sun Zhang grumbled, doing business with you outlanders is such a pain. Then, he went on to explain, you can use your identity tags to claim your living quarters and a full year's worth of rations. When Su Changyu asked about cultivation, Sun Zhang told us that the mortal energy within our bodies was far too heavy. He gave us exactly 3 options to fix it. First, the spirit pool, which only opens once every 3 years. Second, the mystic yellow cleansing mantra, which takes 5 to 6 years of grueling practice. And, when he got to the third option, he suddenly dropped his voice to a whisper. Volunteering, for human experimentation.